Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast presented by Spartan Forge. On today's episode, myself and Justin will be recapping our Montana elk hunt where we spent 21 days in the backcountry going through it. So I just got home and I'm excited to be able to share all the details of this hunt with you. Some of the different topics that we go through has to do with locating elk in the heat, my buddy Tim's bull, getting in the middle of the herd, being patiently aggressive, basically, my opportunity to once-in-a-lifetime bull, how weather was affecting the elk, just so many different things that we've learned on that hunt from being out there for that long. It was just crazy. It was difficult to spend that much time, but I'm so lucky that I had the opportunity to be able to do so, and I'm excited to share some of those learning lessons with you. In other news, the new deer camp collection of apparel should be up on the website by the time this goes live here. The only thing that I'm missing that hasn't come in yet, and I can't get a date on it, and that's why I've been waiting to release the other stuff, has been the hats. But nonetheless, I do have the Blaze beanies, Blaze Orange Mountain Buck beanies. Those are in stock now and up on the website. The deer camp hoodies, shirts, stickers. I got some new koozies, got a whole bunch of stuff that's up there. So I appreciate you guys checking that out. And if you like some of it and want to purchase it, I'd always appreciate that. And now we're gonna be shifting gears after this one and focusing a lot on whitetail. I'm gonna start bringing back some Mountain Buck Monday episodes. Have a couple episodes during the week. They're gonna bring back Mountain Buck Mondays in general. All of those different things will be on their way back. I'm only here this week back in Pennsylvania. I won't even be here for the opener. I'll be heading to Illinois, as I mentioned in this podcast. It came out of nowhere, but I'm going to be doing a hunt out there on the behalf of Quiet Cat, who had I'll go into detail a little bit later here in the episode, but basically I've known one of their sales guys. I used to be a dealer for them a long time ago when I worked in an archery shop, and got the opportunity to go out and hunt some private farm country and be able to, and basically just like turn us loose. So it's a place they run an outfitting business out of, but they don't do it in the early season. So there's a few of us that are getting to go out and see if we can, put our spin on it and see if we can figure it out in 4 days. So that's a change of things there for me. I never did anything like that. Haven't hunted farm country in 6 or 7 years. So that'll be a fun change for sure. And I may even drive straight from there to West Virginia, get some cameras out and start doing a little bit of scouting, maybe a couple days of hunting down there before I come back home, and then spend the rest of October here in Pennsylvania doing hunting and trying to put out a bunch of content here to help all of you during the season. If you have anything specific that you want to hear, or if you want me to do another Q&A podcast, any of that stuff, please shoot me an email. I'd love to be able to help you out and gear things towards that. So with that being said, I hope that you enjoy this podcast. I hope you get some things that you learned out of it, picked up on it. If you ever get a chance to be able to try something out of your comfort zone, try a new hunt and do that like that we did on this one, it was just such an awesome experience. So can't wait for everyone to get to check out the film when that comes out. Probably later this year, early next year. So a lot of cool stuff here. But anyways, have a great week and good luck to everyone for some of the openers that are coming up at the end of this week and weekend. So good luck to you, and we will talk to you soon. All right, we're live. Justin Mueller, welcome back to the podcast, buddy.
I appreciate you having me. It feels good to be back on. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been since the scouting camp here, but we've just finished up 21 days together.
Yeah, we did.
21 days in the backcountry. It's just you and me and you.
And the elk.
And the elk.
Yeah.
Well, and Tim
And
joined
Tim,
it.
yeah. I will say though, like 21 days is a long time for one run, but it feels like it went really fast.
Yeah. No, it definitely did. So we've been backpacked in for just about every dang day of this trip, which was not the plan. If anybody listened to kind of my game plan going in to this hunt, it was to scout, backpack in for the first 3 days of the season, scout a little bit, and then check out some other areas. But we found elk right away, and we never left. We never left that area, so we were backpacked in for all 20 days, which is a long time to be living in a tent on a little air pad back in the mountains.
Yeah. I mean, I'll take it though. I'd way rather have that the way we had than running around trying to locate him. I mean, within the first 2 hours of the first morning, I kind of had a feeling we were going to be spending a lot of time in there.
Yeah, no, that definitely made a lot of sense. But so we're back here at the truck now. After all this time, enjoying some Big Truck beer. You got the K5 Topless Blonde, which is a blonde ale by Big Truck, and then I also have the Half Cab, which is just like a hazy IPA essentially. And yeah, so this is kind of our, we did our work and we're done now. And yeah, we're just enjoying a good beer and recapping kind of the hunt there.
Yeah. It's what is it, noon? Perfect time for a beer in the afternoon, but it was well needed after all of the hiking and we packed all of our camp out last night, got everything ready for, today to kind of hit the road, but very much needed drink.
Yeah, no, that's that's for sure. We were both saying our bodies are kind of and minds are both shutting down. The last few days, we'll go back to the beginning and kind of explain everything what went on with this hunt. So I wanna start off by saying that coming into this hunt, I had a pretty good inclination that we could find elk, and the reason for saying that was I'd spring bear hunted the area. That was kind of one of the reasons for bear hunting it is a scouting trip for elk too. So that's something that I think it was super valuable. The fact that we were able to spend some time in the spring, bear hunting and finding elk sign, and found some areas that look like, okay, there's a lot of rut sign here. There's a ton of rubs. Oh, it looked really good. And so we're like, okay, that made sense. And it just so happened that my buddy Tim Bueno, who I met back when he lived in New York, who lives in Montana now, I met him quite a while ago back in train hunt competitions. And I need to get Tim on the podcast. I've been saying that for a long time, but I will. And Tim had come in. He was actually also hunting the area and didn't know that until my brother told me when I picked the area for bear hunting. And then so Tim, bear hunted a little bit, not with us, but we camped together. And then he also, just having the Montana license, was deciding he was going to elk hunt the area too. And he came in a couple weeks before and put up some trail cameras and stuff that we didn't really use that trail camera information for anything other than knowing that, yeah, there's bulls in here.
Yeah.
And, he found some elk on some different ridges and stuff when he was scouting. So that was helpful, going into it, knowing that there was elk at least a few weeks before the season in there. So we came in the day before the season. We got the quiet cats out. We brought them along for the hunt because the area our second area we were going to has ATV trails, and we were planning on taking the quiet cats back in the electric bikes to be able to do that, which would have been a really useful tool. We really never really had to go to plan B except for today. Like, we just did a little bit of we wanted to hunt closer to the truck this morning because we only had the morning to hunt essentially, and you got to head back to Minnesota and I got to head back to Pennsylvania, but after today. And so we were just finishing up some stuff, but nonetheless we backpacked in to this area and set up our camp the night before. I don't think we didn't hear any bugles or anything that first night, but we went in to, it was super hot. Let's put it that way. Let's start out that the hunt was extremely hot. The first week temperatures were going to hit triple digits, 100 degrees. freaking hot. It was miserable.
Way too hot.
Way too hot.
Yeah.
Thought it would keep the hunters out of the woods, which it did during the week. But the weekend, my brother came in that first weekend, and he said there was 13 vehicles next to ours at the trailhead. So that was tough. We did run into a couple hunters that they're nice guys the first day, and we were trying to hunt water because it was so hot, and there wasn't very much water. So there were some stock tanks that we sat over and a couple wallows, and we didn't see anything or hear anything the first day, but, you could tell the elk sign. The elk were there. So the next day, we decided to go to a different location, and I wasn't sure how the calling was going to how aggressive I was going to be with calling. I've had some luck with it in the past and some not, but I wasn't sure. And both Tim and I were a little call shy at first, and then when we were up glassing at this one point and dropped down in the bottom, and I was like, should I just do a cow call? And Tim and you were like, yeah, might as well.
Send one out. Why not?
Send one out. So I did a cow call and one bugle. And the thing was, he was coming from the bottom, and but he was ready, just about up to bed. And that was, I don't know, 9 o'clock in the morning or something. And like, all right, let's make a plan. Like, I think, we looked at Spartan Forge and pulled it up. It's like, okay, good idea that he's going to bed around this corner. We kept him bugling until he went to bed. And we're like, once he was in the same spot, bugled a couple times, like, okay, he's probably bedded there. And this is where I think our game plan was on point from the standpoint of we knew thermals just switched and they're starting to rise. So we couldn't just go straight at them. We did a big loop around, which required a lot of hiking, and our legs were still not completely used to the mountains at that point. So it was a little ways, and we got up there, and then we waited on the backside of where he thought he was bedded until the thermals settled out about 11 in the morning before we went in for the move there.
Yeah, that was perfect because it kind of let us get like a lay of the land, and right away sent out that cow call, had one bugle, kind of just seeing where everything is. First day back there, just kind of getting a lay of the land. We, like you said, we knew it from bear hunting, but that was a good move. Just kind of find where he's going to bed. It's we're just getting into the hunt, play it safe, let those thermals get rising and come in from the backside from above them. So
yeah, no, that was nice. And actually, as we were sitting there waiting for the thermals to switch, he bugled, and he was almost exactly where we thought he was. And so we were only 150 yards from him at that point. So we kind of moved into position. You went with Tim. So Tim was going to be the shooter. I was going to be the caller. And we worked back. So I angled with the wind to try to get it right. And as you guys were setting up, a bull came through, went right past me, 35 yards. And I'm like looking at him. And I was like, he's going to go right to those guys. And then I look over, and I see Tim walking to his spot parallel to the bull, but it's so thick that the bull didn't see Tim.
Yeah.
Tim didn't see the bull. I was blown away by that. Like, I couldn't believe that happened, and I didn't know this until after. And then, so I started doing a little bit of calling. I started calling earlier than I said I was going to, and then I hear some, like, sound like an elk running, and I was like, uh-oh. And you can kind of take it from there, what happened.
Well, it was weird because we heard the bugle, right? We kind of knew where he was going to hopefully come from. And we talked about, the three of us, like 3 different spots we could have set up. We were kind of bouncing ideas back and forth, like, well, if he circles, he's going to catch our wind, so let's go to here. And we kind of just kept pushing until we found a spot that we were all like, this could work. And we were set up, ready for him to come into that little opening that was right in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
The first time, like you said, it was so thick. The first time Tim actually saw him.
Which was a different bull, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm getting ahead of myself here.
No, you're good. Keep going.
You want to talk about that bull?
No, I already talked about the bull that I saw.
So that one that it came around, the first time Tim saw it, it had already worked, almost behind us. And it's just so thick in there, and you think when you're walking, it's loud, everything's loud because it was so dry. We didn't hear anything. We just saw him standing right there, and we could hear you calling and everything. And I think your calling really made that bull come around because I think he was just going to walk straight away from us. But I think you cow calling, you were kind of like the quarterback in that situation. It was like
Yep.
you were, on this side, we were in the middle, and the bull was past us. So when you were calling, he was kind of circling around.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
when
he
we
was
saw
trying
him.
to get downwind.
He was trying to get downwind, right?
Yep.
So
And then at that point, once you guys saw him, Tim was able to draw and stand up and be able to get a shot at that point. And that's when I heard the running, and so I waited a little bit, and I cow called again and bugled, and then I heard you guys whistling. I'm like, okay, something happened. So I ran over, and I could see Tim just beside himself, kind of just down on his knees, like, holy cow. I'm like, and I looked, and he didn't have an arrow on his rest, and I was like, all right, he made that happen.
mm-hmm.
And you were able to capture the bull on film and everything else. Even though he came in behind you, you're able to turn your camera and be able to get that. But right off the bat, we kind of figured that the shot might be a little bit back, because the bull's leg was in a different position than what Tim had recognized, and he realized that right off the arrow hit where he was aiming. It was just a little bit far back, because with elk, with where their vitals are, it almost looks like, they're big vitals, but they're a lot of it's covered by what looks like the shoulder blade, which is actually what they call the vital V, which where you can slip an arrow in there pretty easily. So his arrow was sticking in a tree behind there. He had an iron wheel on, zipped right through it and stuck in that tree. And we waited about an hour and didn't hear any crashing or anything to start blood trailing. And we blood trailed for a little while, and then it looked decent, but it looked like liver and maybe one lung. And so we're like, all right, we need to give this bull time, but we couldn't give it too much time because of how hot it was getting.
Yeah, it was 96, 97 degrees.
Yeah.
Or going to be in an hour or two at that point.
Yeah. So we, at that point, we're like, okay, we lost blood, and we waited back, and we waited another hour or so, but we're like, we're gonna have to keep pushing, but we lost blood, so it turned into kind of a grid search, and we spent the rest of the day grid searching the top, and then we went and checked water, because a lot of times, there wasn't very much water, so we had places to check, and elk will go to those places, and nothing. We're like, wow, what the heck? It looked like the shot, should be deadly there, and we kept searched the rest of that day, searched the next day, and nothing. And it was, pretty disheartening. My brother came in to help look, and just covered that every square inch of that ridge top, the bottoms around it, covered a lot of ground. And Tim was pretty disheartened. That's his first bull, and Tim's a very, very, very good shot, and he was just like, man, I just misjudged where the vitals were on him and hit a little bit back and a little bit low, and actually would have been heart if it was a little bit further forward. But nonetheless, then after a couple days there, he had to head back to work, and we were like, okay, we'll just keep looking. It was Labor Day at that point, and we kept looking and slash hunting at the same time while we were doing it, and never could recover that bull. We told some other hunters we ran into if they look out for it, and at that point we're like, all right, the meat's definitely spoiled, so there's not really anything else we can do other than look for the crows and listen for coyotes, and that's really about it. And I'll skip ahead a little bit here. A week later, I was in a completely different part of it. We were 2.5 miles from the shot and came across the bull dead.
Yep. Yeah, we were down on that little bottom piece, and we could smell it when we came over the hill. It smelled like elk, like there was just stuff going on in there, and then
it smelled like death.
Yeah, there you go. That's a little better way to say it. But we just kind of circled down and around and walked up right on it, laying there. So, not the best way to end that story, because obviously Tim didn't get any of the meat from it, with it being so hot and spoiled. But at least the bull is dead. It's not wounded out there, limping around. It's dead. Tim came in, recovered the rack, tagged it, did everything right. So
yeah, no, I respect him for that, because actually he was coming back when we found it. He was on his way here to do some more searching and then help out a little bit with the hunt. And I called him right before he lost service, and I so happened to have service at that spot, which was rare. And I was like, I found your bull, and he's like, are you kidding me? Like, and he came in and he did the respectful thing. He's like, I put an arrow in it. He's like, this really sucks. I can't get the meat off it. But the bears, the coyotes, everything else ate very well. That thing was cleaned right down to the bone, basically, in that short amount of time. And we were able to confirm it was the bull he shot based off the video footage and everything that he had. And he put his tag on it. He put his Montana tag on it, and you know, took the skull and the head out. But it's not the best ending to the story of his first elk, but at the same time, it was great that we had that opportunity that soon, and just realizing how tough bow hunting is and how quickly it can go haywire, as you'll hear a little bit more as the story goes on. But to kind of continue with it here, we had hot weather, but we were finding elk. We found elk, you know, from after that day, we were finding elk quick, and we found a herd that had multiple bulls in it and a ton of cows already.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking 50 cows that was with this herd, and I was like, there's got to be a big bull leading it. And I remember that one morning, they'd head up the mountain every morning. Different times. It wasn't like you couldn't pattern them, but we knew that at some point they were going to come up the mountain, and I think it was day 4 or 5, something like that. I slid in, you and I slid in, and there was 2 bulls going back and forth. One was a herd bull, and one was one that was trying to be a contender, and they were screaming, and got in this thick. This is the other part of this story is you're going to hear me say thick a lot, because this stuff that these elk were living in think of like a 8-year-old clear cut with, you just got branches everywhere, trees everywhere, all different sizes. You got junipers that are waist high. You've got jack pines. You've got other pines. You've got all this stuff. It's difficult to move through there. So we got in within 50 yards of these 2 bulls, and we still can't see them at this point. And I looked at you in the camera. I said, I'm going to challenge him. And I just screamed a bugle in his face, and that thing let out a roar like you never heard. And he came busting through the brush. It was. I'm shortening up the story a little bit. You'll be able to see some of it in the film, but it came busting in, and I had a window. You weren't able to have a window because of where it was at on film, and everything looked good. I saw one branch going over, and I thought my arrow could slide underneath it. That was incorrect. My arc of the arrow hit it. It was 40 yards, hit it, and you watch my nocturnal dive right underneath him, right into the dirt. And I was like, oh, and he didn't know what happened. The wind was good. And actually almost called him back in.
We almost got him back in. We got really close that second time.
I just remembered that. Yeah, we almost called him right back in. And this was a big 6-point bull, real big bull. And he wasn't the herd bull, but he was a big bull. And he, you know, we keep working on him. And then the herd was going off. So he's like, screw this guy. I'm following the cows and the rest of the herd. So he kind of just kept going, and we kept moving on him, and almost got another shot as we chased him up the mountain. Almost got a shot. I saw the herd bull for the first time, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's freaking huge. And almost got another shot, and just kept going. We chased him all the way around. They went up the mountain and then circled back around to bed. And basically we did this for another 4 or 5 days of just chasing them to bed. And then the evenings were completely silent during that hot weather. So the evenings we'd go find a place to sit water, and didn't have any luck, but that's kind of do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah,
first part?
I'll back way up here.
Okay.
Well, just the one where your arrow hit a branch. The cool part for me about that was how long we worked that bull and played cat and mouse with him before we got the shot. From the time we first made a move on him to when you actually shot was probably, over an hour or 2.
Yeah.
And we would just, once again, so thick. We would just slip in, and he was ripping. He was bugling. Every time you would call or do anything, he was just on it. And we were very mobile on that one. We would, anytime he bugled, we would move this way, move forward 20, 30 yards, try to find, in all of that, try to find a lane where you could shoot a little bit. The bull would bugle just off to the left a little bit. We were watching our thermals and our wind, and we were just kind of just always staying around him and being safe but aggressive at the same exact time. And it kind of got to that point, like you said, when you said you were going to challenge him. That was after like a solid 45 minutes of like cow calls and getting close, and it got to a point where he, like, it would ring your ears when he would bugle.
Yeah.
It was that close, and that's when you were like, it's go time. Like,
Yeah.
I'm doing it now. But it was just so cool because it wasn't like we just walked up on him and saw him. It was, one wrong move by us, one anything, and he would have winded us and it'd have been over. And we just were on him for however long it was, and then you finally got the shot. So
Yeah, no, I'm
great.
glad you added those details. The one thing that I learned a lot was about these elk is wind, which is, it sounds pretty self-explanatory, but wind means everything. Like, they can even see you and not be spooked as much as, if they wind you, they're freaking gone.
They're gone.
But if they just get a visual or they hear you, it's not as big of a deal as that wind. So I was throwing milkweed like it was going out of style, like just tossing it everywhere, and it's shifting and it's changing at that point in the morning, and just kept like you said, cat and mouse, and we kept until we got so close and aggressive, and that thick cover helped us get close, but it was a detriment to trying to shoot. Like, there was many places that we were probably even closer than 40 yards at some points. You still couldn't even see them.
Yep.
You'd hear them smashing branches, raking trees, just like, it was some of the craziest experience that I've had, elk hunting, and so much fun. But that we spent so much time on this herd and learning it, and I've never spent that much time around elk as we've done on this trip. And I'm not a good elk hunter. And Justin was a huge help in this, as he's hunted with a bunch of really good elk hunters and filmed a bunch of really good elk hunters. So we just kind of kept playing them, and then, a few days later, we got in on the herd once they bedded. We get in when they're bedded. And this strategy, I loved this one day. We would work in. You could tell the herd bull was out here, and you could hear cows around them. And then there was the satellites on the outskirts. And so we'd slip in. We actually got so close to one of the satellites because he was bugling the other direction and didn't realize we were that close that we bumped him at like 15 yards. It was so thick.
Yeah.
And we jumped up that 5-point. He ran off, and we're like, okay, just keep going. Just keep going. Wind was still good for us. And we got set between two bulls. And I remember I started cow calling, and they're bugling back, but they weren't coming in. So I just tried to get the temperature of the bulls, and I ripped a good bugle. And that one came in, but and I tried turning my head when I bugle, so it sounded like further away, but they still know right where the heck you're at. And that bull pinned where we were at. He couldn't see us. We were sitting there, but he'd come out, and he was only 45 yards, but he was in complete brush, and you could just see his head looking. And he stood there and stared for 15 minutes, I bet.
Yeah.
And then he left, and then we called him back in. And same thing, he wouldn't come, and we even adjusted at that point, but he would not come. So we're like, all right. And then other bulls were bugling, like, okay, we got to keep moving. And we just kept going. And then at one point, I go, Justin, I said, there's cows all around us. Like, we snuck right in. We had cow
like inside the herd.
At first, we saw a cow at like 50 yards. And then we're like, there's one right there, like 15 yards.
Yeah.
And the herd bull was right on top of this hill. And we couldn't get him fired up enough to do anything with. And then eventually it was like, okay, we need to back out and readjust. And we sat on the herd, and they went a different direction quickly right before dark, and weren't able to catch up with them. But our strategy became, as we went on through the hunt, even days later, was following the herd up the hill, trying to get a shot, which is very difficult. They have one goal is to push cows to bed, and calling wasn't really effective at that point unless you were right on top of them, which was hard to do with keeping the wind right. And then we'd get close to the herd and just cow call every once in a while, which we did have some luck with bulls coming into us there. Had a spike bull that could have shot, and some other elk that came in and just weren't able to get shot opportunities at. But the one day we were doing that, this is a funny story. We're like, okay, the herd's bedding. We were hungry, so what we do is we wouldn't eat breakfast until after our main push after the herd, because I didn't want to eat breakfast at 4:45 in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning. So I was like, all right, we'll just carry our stove with us, and whenever we get time in the morning, we'll eat a packaroon or a protein bar or something, to keep us going. And we're like, all right, we're hungry. They're laid down for the day. Let's wait till the thermals are good. So we backed off. We thought we were far enough away from them. I didn't realize there were some satellites that kind of branched out, and we were sitting there cooking with the jet boil, and I'm like, I hear something. And I'm like, jet boil's running full speed.
Ripping.
And I'm like, whatever. All of a sudden, I look behind, and there's a 6-point bull staring at us. He takes off running.
At like what, 40 yards?
Yeah, if that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you got to be kidding me. I threw a little pity party for like 30 seconds. And then I'm like, all right, let's try to call him back in. We get up, cow call, sit there for about 20 minutes. Nothing. Like, all right, let's go finish our meal. He's spooked.
Yeah.
We sit back down, first spoonful in the mouth. He's right there again, same exact spot. He would have been at 15 yards.
Yeah.
And if we would have, been still standing there, and that's when I learned you got to give him time sometimes. And he comes in silent. He came in silent, and he took off. And we had another time on the trip where we had a bull come in when we were eating breakfast too. I don't know what it was. I think it's the jet boil.
Yeah, it was kind of like our joke. Like, well, what time do you want to get busted by a bull today while we're eating breakfast? You want to do it now, or you want to wait an hour?
Yeah.
Because it's just like, it was just so weird, especially when that one came back the second time. Like, he didn't wind us the first time, so I don't think he was super spooked. I think he just because you know how it is when you're eating, you're kind of laying down by a tree, you're kind of low profile. He probably saw us move and really didn't know what he was looking at. And then the second time, he came right back in. But it was just kind of our joke for the whole time. It's like, it's just,
Yep.
And then after that, you couldn't even hardly enjoy your meal because your head's on a swivel because you think every elk's going to come in now.
Yep. No, for sure. And we just, and the herd continued to grow bigger is what we learned. The herd just kept getting bigger, and as the herd got bigger, they were a lot less receptive to calls.
Yep.
Because, okay, the herd, why would a bull come to fight you when he's already got 6-7 other bulls around him that are there, they just bugle back and forth for vocalization to see where they're at. And why would he come into a cow call when there's 50 cows that are in this spot already? Like, it just doesn't, they weren't coming in. And at the same time, we had a lot of hunting pressure move in.
Yeah.
And ran into some other people calling and doing that, and it became difficult. They started changing their bedding up a little bit, and we met a lot of really great people out in the woods that were hunting, and they were nice and easy to go. And then there were some others that paid no attention to wind or anything, and were continuously kind of bumping
through the bedding.
Elk, walking. Like, say the thermals are rising, and they come in from the bottom, and as we're sitting on the herd and blow them out, and then the elk started moving. They started moving to different areas, and they started even moving on to private at some points, and it made it a lot harder as we started going on. And then one day I remember we actually went to look for more elk because we were struggling so much with getting close to these ones. Like, maybe we can find some lone ones, and we did. We found some ones on different ridges, except for oh man,
they're too smart. The single ones are too smart for us.
They are. The single ones were too smart, and they wouldn't respond unless you basically, which we ended up jumping some in the beds because we got so close because they weren't responding. So we were trying to get close to them. And during this whole trip, we named all these bulls. We had Pablo Escobar, the Marlboro Man, Jose Bolvo. It all started back in Idaho years ago. We joked around. We'd come up with these names for these elk like people do for deer, and they were all named after like liquor drinks and
Roger Raghorn.
Roger, that was the one that Tim shot.
Yep.
Roger Raghorn. And so the bull I missed that we had named Pablo Escobar. Next thing you know, we're sitting there. We hear a whole bunch of commotion. 4 cows come busting out of the brush, not on a trail, right behind us. And he's right behind them, runs past us at 7 yards. And I couldn't get him to stop. I'm at full draw, and he just ran right past us.
And he looked huge when he was that close.
Oh, my
He
gosh.
was just a giant. It was just one of those things. We heard him running. We heard him coming in. And it's like, what are they going to do? Where are they going to go? And we're kind of like, what's going to happen here? And they just ran right on top of us. Those cows, I mean, if they cut to the right on the backside of the tree that we were by. Had they not done that, I probably could have smacked one with my hand.
Yeah.
Like if they had kept running straight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's about a 3-second gap in here. He comes running through, and Beau tried to stop him. He's at full draw, swinging with him. Props to you on that one. I feel like a lot of hunters would have sent an arrow into his guts or his hindquarters on that one, just because he is so close that in your mind you think you can do it. But man, are they fast.
Yeah.
They're so fast,
No, I didn't feel good about it, and I wasn't going to shoot unless I felt confident in the shot. And it's funny, you see the video, the sound I made to try to stop him, because I didn't have my mouth call in, was a mix. I was trying to do a bark, but somehow did like a mixture of a cow call and a bark, and it turned out sounded like a donkey. But nonetheless, I think you could have screamed at them.
Yeah,
and nothing. They were, and it looks like they were rutting, but I'm pretty sure they got busted by some other hunters. And the way they were running, like it just seemed like that had to have been the situation. But they came running right past us, and man, what a rush that was, though. It was kind of a kick in the nuts, but at the same time, it was super cool to be able to see that.
Right. It was kind of disheartening, seeing him run off and his antlers are hitting branches and he's tipping his head and he just looks giant. It's like, But at the same time, it's like there's just nothing you can do there. You tried to stop him. He was running. The cows were running. What do? You can't really get too, heartbroken about something like that because it's like he just didn't stop.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yep.
So,
it is what it is. That's exactly
It was a very, very cool encounter, though.
Yeah.
That's the closest, as far as like visibility and everything, that's the closest I've been to a bull that size and maybe ever. I mean, that was only, like you said, 7-8 yards.
Yeah.
That was cool.
It was cool. So we did a lot of bouncing around, and after that, one morning we were on this other hill, and I'm like, man, I want to try to get back on that herd again. Like, and you're like, let's do it. Let's go. So we dropped down off one hillside, up the other, and it didn't take long. They were bugling at like noon. We found them, just in their beds, and so we got close and just sat on them all day, and then as they started firing up again around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we moved even closer and got into kill position. And what we learned was to basically everything's gauged off that herd bull. And that's what we call the Marlboro man, because he sounds like he smoked cigarettes his whole life, because he's just raspy, deep,
Very distinguishable.
Oh,
you know when it's him.
You know exactly when it's him. And so we moved in, and we were a little ways away from him, but there were some other bulls around us, and they started moving at that point. And they're moving away from us, but I'm like, this other bull is going to come in. And at that point, my dad actually had texted me. We went out for a day a half a day to take a break, went to my brother's house, and my dad's like, would a decoy help being a solo caller? And I'm like, no, that's, and I'm like, wait, maybe it would. So I bought one of those Montana decoys that was just the ass of the elk, the backcountry elk. It's like 9.5 ounces. We called her Sandra.
Because Pablo.
Yeah.
It's
Pablo's girl. And so we set her up, but then the bull worked close to us, but just out of sight again, heading towards that herd bull. So we picked Sandra up, threw her in the pack, and ran. Just ran to try to get in the middle of them. The wind was good. Thermals were still coming up. We got to one point, I'm like, holy cow, Marlboro man sounds like he's coming back at us. Like, so he spun around, and all of a sudden we see a cow come crashing up through the brush, and she runs out, and she pegs us at like 15 yards out in the open here. He's coming up through the brush, is bugling. He can barely fit through that brush with his antlers. Now this this bull is much bigger than Pablo.
Way bigger. Different class of animal.
Yeah. When you see a herd bull that's I don't know, 340, 350 plus.
Yeah.
Type bull, you know it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I went to full draw, and he stopped because she stopped. And I saw a little bit of a gap there. I could just see kind of his vitals there in these branches. He's about 18 yards, kind of low light. It's hard to see all the branches. We had probably about 15, 20 minutes of shooting light left. And I'm at full draw. And I remember I had my top pin on that dialed sight was 30 yards at that point, and I knew he was closer, so I put it down right about his heart. And I just practiced this shot. We were just down here, shooting, figuring out, been doing it all summer, but figuring out where it hits at that point. So I put it down just below his heart, and I'm like, I can squeeze it through there. My pins look pretty good. I shot. You could hear, well, I'd see the nocturnal go. And somewhat, it was kind of hard with the one just being adrenaline filled like that, but I felt solid as can be. And after watching the film, you could see or hear where it kind of clicked some branches, and I'm like, ooh, that looks high. And he runs off, and he's still bugling. I'm cow calling. He rips off. I'm like, holy cow! Like,
What just happened?
What just happened? I'm like, just shot the biggest bull that I might ever see. And I was just like, and I felt like super good other than it was a little high, but I was like, that's got to be high lung. And so I called my dad again on this one spot on this ridge. We had some service, and I was talking through it with him, and he's like, find your arrow. And I'm like, I can't find the arrow. Can't find it. Has a nocturnal on it. I should be able to see it, and then it got dark, and I could not find it. Well, one, the nocturnal shut off right after it hit, so that didn't help. Two, the arrow had actually stuck in him. So what had happened was, we ended up that night. So okay, I'll talk a little bit about it. But we couldn't find blood right at the shot. And it was hard, it was getting dark,
Which is typical with a high hit as well. So.
And I remember, I took a picture from where I shot, which was key at this point. And I remember where he ran around and looped around. So I kind of followed those trails. And trying to follow tracks is difficult because there's so many elk.
It looks like cattle trails.
Yeah.
And even when they're not on trails, it's so hard to follow a single track because there's so many elk in there. You can follow a track for 20, 30 yards, and then it's just crossed, and you just can't do it.
Yeah. So we follow it around and eventually find my arrow. And it's broken 2 pieces, and there's still a third piece that with the broadhead on it, I'm like, that's still in him. Like, so it was broken. Looked like good blood, 2/3 of the way up the arrow. And I'm like, okay. I was at this point, I'm like, all right, high lung, stuck in his opposite shoulder. Like, must have just nailed that. And I was like, okay, that's probably what happened. So we started blood trailing, good blood. We walked for 350, 400 yards, following good blood. Like, not like buckets dumped out, but I never had to stop to look for blood. It was always just
slow
right there.
walking, noticing. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was just dripping. It wasn't spraying. It was just dripping, which is a key point to this. And he was still chasing cows, zooming in and out of stuff, in and out of brush, going up. And then we lost blood. And I'm like, okay, it's going to be cold overnight. At this point, we're at day 13 of the hunt, like something like 13, 14. And it was September 14th. I do know that. And I'm like, all right, let's back out and come back up at first light and look for him. But then I was like, I kept hearing his bugle.
Yep.
A ways away. And I'm like, that's
with
not
the herd.
With the herd. I'm like, that's not good. So like, all right, let's hike all the way back to the truck to put the footage on your computer so you could slow it down and see if we could see anything. And you couldn't see the shot impact because the tree was in front of you where I had shot through. Once again, because it's so thick.
Yeah.
But once it ran away, you could see the arrow sticking out of it. And the nocturnal had shut off, like I said, when it hit. But you could see the arrow, and it was high, way higher than I expected. Basically, I don't know how it didn't spine him. It was that high, and it was right behind the shoulder where I wanted it to be, but just high, and must have deflected high. I have no idea how it could possibly have hit at that point, but you could see the arrow sticking out, running away, and I sent the picture to my dad and everything, and he sent back a picture of the anatomy of an elk and stuff, and I'm like, I literally think I missed everything. I think I just missed the spine. Just below that was the top of the lungs. Like, I just missed everything.
By an inch. Missed everything by an inch, any direction.
Yep. And I'm like, crap. I'm like, well, maybe, he bled enough that, he's going to die, and he was just running, so he didn't know, so it's good that he just keeps moving and running. We went in the next morning, checked, we found one more speck of blood like 5 feet later on a branch. That was it. Did a bunch of grid searching, checked some water spots that were there and where the herd went. We went in that direction overnight, found where the herd was, but couldn't find any more blood, couldn't find any beds where he bedded down, nothing. And getting pretty disappointed. Actually ran into some other hunters who were hunting the same area, and they knew that bull was bugle. They're like, oh, you shot him?
Yeah, the real raspy one, right?
Yeah.
The big real raspy one. Yep, that's him.
And then all of a sudden we heard him. We heard him that next day, and I'm like, oh, that's got to be him. And then, but we're like, all right, let's follow that. That's our best lead. Maybe he's still going to die. And then we ran into those other hunters again. They're like, oh, yeah, we heard him. He's moving around this morning. So that day, nothing happened. Next day, we went in and got on him again, found him, and ended up getting a view of him quickly as he's pushing the cows up. Seemed just fine.
Just fine. And the thing, too, like, just to kind of set the stage a little bit better than I guess we did, like, in this area where we had been hunting for, basically a week at that point, maybe even more.
Yeah.
There was, we would hear hundreds of bugles a day. Like, quite literally hundreds. But it wasn't that, obviously wasn't that many bulls, right? So, like, we would hear that bull and all the satellites just all morning long from the minute we got up there all the way until noon, sometimes into the afternoon. We could tell, after a week of hearing all that over and over, you could kind of tell, like, what was going on. Like, that bull, like, a lot of the satellites were a little more higher pitched. We could tell who Pablo was when he was bugling.
Yeah.
Just from having encounters and hearing them. So when we heard that bull, it's just a completely different bugle. It's not even the same as the satellites at all. And when you hear it, it's just so raspy and growly. And when we heard that, and then we got a glimpse of him too, which was nice just to confirm.
Yeah. No. And the one other thing I wanted to say about that shot that I learned afterwards was. So what I wasn't thinking about, and this is my inexperience of hunting off the ground in this thick of country, is, my sight picture was clear, but it was so close that my rest is a little below there. So when I'm going through, it doesn't take much to skip off that branch. I'm showing it on the video, so if you're listening, it's hard to see, but to skip off that top of the branch and deflect up, it doesn't take much to do that. And we had ended up talking to some other hunters that had missed bulls, in that area, same situation.
It's so thick in here.
It's so thick, I know. Can't get an arrow through, that situation. And I'm not defending myself for giving, that, looking back, would I take that shot again? Probably. Yeah. I felt very confident in it. I felt good about my shot process, everything. It's just, it didn't work out, and I'm really upset that I drew blood and didn't get him. But that bull, literally, we chased him for another 7 days.
Yep.
And, or I guess 8 days. And he is still living fine. Right now as we're recording this podcast, he's still okay. Yep. Like, he had an arrow in him, but it was in a non-lethal spot. And it, again, not trying to justify it. It's just, it sucks 100%. Not only that I lost this big bull, but the fact that I hit a bull and didn't recover it. I felt like we needed to share these stories and just be completely honest about it, because people can learn from these experiences and learn from this, thick country, that it's tough and it's hard to find those shooting lanes and thinking about your setups and when you're moving and what your shots look like, and it's going to be close in that type area, and you have some risk involved. Let's put it that way.
Yep. Yeah, I mean it's so thick. Once again, it's so thick that like we only saw elk 10% of the time that we were actually in them. You know what I mean? Like you'd hear bugles 40 yards to the front of you and 60 yards to your left or right. And it's like, hey, and you could hear them running, you could hear branches breaking, you could hear the bulls chasing, you could hear satellites coming in off of another ridge coming down. You could hear all of it, but you couldn't necessarily see it.
Yeah.
And then it would come time where like your bull, from the time you first saw him to the time you drew back was maybe 4 seconds.
If that.
If that. It was like
Yeah.
bull right here, pull back, there's a cow, here's my lane. I mean, it's so
It's
thick.
quick.
But that's also a good way to, if you can find a spot with a good lane, to get in on them good, because especially when they're running around like that, they can't hear you. We walk,
Yeah.
we were being quiet, but we got inside the herd multiple times.
Yeah, and although this part obviously didn't work out for me, one thing that I was glad that I did ahead of time in practicing every day with my bow was figuring out where your pins hit at off yardages and judging yardages. Like I learned a lot about judging yardages just from every time I'd go to set up at a spot. Justin would see me, I'd click with my rangefinder, I'd check all the trees around, and that at first I'll guess it and then I'll confirm it. And as you start doing that more and more, you start getting better at it. But it's quick. You got to be. There's no time to range something like my Idaho bull where he was in that open and I could range him ahead of time. There's none of that.
There's none of that.
It's quick. It reminds me of hunting whitetails off the ground in West Virginia or Pennsylvania, thick stuff. You just got to know yardages and you got to be proficient on that aspect. So it was just tough. And so then I hunted that bull specifically for days and days after it, trying to put another opportunity at him, and more hunters moved in, and they eventually became unhuntable. They moved to private, and it was unhuntable. So the last couple of days we kind of just moved away from them and tried hunting some other bulls. Snuck up within 30 yards of a bedded cow with another small bull that I was going to try to shoot at that point, and too thick, couldn't get a shot.
That was a cool one, though, because we heard bugling on that hill all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you threw a waypoint out there on Spartan Forge. You're like, he's going to be sitting right in here somewhere on this bench, And
Yeah.
Sure enough, we, I think I have it on video, but I remember right before we saw him, you looked back at me and you were like, the pin's right here. He's going to be bedded right over this hill somewhere. And I was like, all right, let's get ready. We crested the hill, dude, and he was 35 yards right, like, I mean, I'm not trying to inflate your head, but you probably dropped the pin within 20 yards of where he was actually laying down.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
No, it was. Yeah, he was right there. And it was crazy that this is another thing. So from hunting this many days, you learn so much about elk, and they don't bed necessarily in the same spot every day, but if they're unpressured, they do a lot of times.
A lot of times. Yep.
We learned a couple things. Right before rain, they would move down. They would start moving earlier in the day. At one point, it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and they went to their feeding area.
Like a solid, 6-7 hours before dark, they were already moving towards. And the problem is some of them they'd hit like that transition point on private.
Yep.
So if they start leaving at 1, you have 45 minutes of good hunting until you have to go find something else, because they move through that stuff so damn fast. It's so hard to keep up with them.
You could sprint through the woods and can't keep up with them.
And we speak that from experience.
Yeah, we tried. A lot of running.
A lot of times.
A lot of miles running. And it was crazy trying to figure it out. We learned that. We learned certain wind directions.
Yeah.
They would sound off or bed on certain faces, which was that was funny, thinking of whitetails. Not exactly the same, but, similar. But, yeah, I had marked so many. Every time I hear a bull bugle, I'd pull out Spartan Forge, I'd point it in that direction, and I'd mark a waypoint. And how many times did we come across and be like, I hear bugle, I'm like, I bet he's right at this waypoint, and he'd be pretty
there.
close, yeah.
And the cool thing about this hunt, a lot of elk hunts, you hear you guys are putting on big miles and stuff, and they're ripping bugles, trying to find and locate just bulls. We never had to do that. All we had to do was sit somewhere for 10 minutes against the tree, and we'd hear a bugle fire off. It was pretty hot up there for the bugles.
No, and I spent the first 4 years of my elk hunting career, I guess if you want to put it that way, just trying to find elk.
Yeah.
And at this point, we had found elk, but that's a whole nother thing to try to be able to and listen to this. You're like, how you're probably thinking like, how did you not get it done that many days when you found elk just about every single day except for the last day?
Except for one day out of 21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out of 21 days, you didn't. And honestly, it's just that last 1%. Cody Rich talks about this. He calls it, you do 90% of the work, you let them do 9, and then you got to force that last 1%. That last 1% is freaking difficult.
Yep.
That setup portion and figuring them out. And again, maybe I'm sure there's there's way better elk hunters than I am that would be able to make some of those opportunities happen. I'm not there yet, but that we definitely learned a lot on this trip, and I think going into another hunt would be able to. And I don't think not saying this area is anything special. It's just literally we found the elk, and for a while there they weren't really that pressured. There was a lot of pressure in the area, but not in that specific spot. We were back in there a ways.
Yep.
That helped, and so that was. We were in elk a lot. It's just so we got to learn their behaviors a lot. Got to listen to their different bugles, what they kind of meant. Got barked at a few times.
A few times, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. And a couple other things I want to say here is, so I looked at my Garmin watch. So I got my Phoenix 7. I was looking at the steps and how much we averaged 8.8 miles a day with 30-pound packs
That ain't bad.
at a minimum over 21 days.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
I told you, was it yesterday or this morning? I went down 2 belt holes tighter since we started.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? And I was like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm sure I lost some weight too, but I was eating good. But it was just we were cranking
We were
them,
going.
and we felt good after a while. It's like a bell curve. So you start here, and I felt pretty good about my fitness at the beginning, but you still got to get your legs underneath you. It takes a few days. Get up, by day 10, we were cranking.
Yeah.
Just never stopping for breaks, just moving when we needed to. We could sprint after elk. And then the last 3 or 4 days, legs started getting wore out.
Yeah. My whole body was wore out.
My back's hurt.
Back and
I bend over.
shoulders,
I couldn't stand back up. And you're sleeping on a little air pad every night on the side of a hill. My sleeping pad would end up in the corner of my tent at the bottom. I had my Seek Outside Silex, and I didn't bring a nest. So this is something I wanted to say. So I've slept in floorless shelters before, but never when it was so hot that there's spiders everywhere. And anyone that knows me knows that I freaking hate spiders more than snakes, more than anything. And I didn't even bring my nest with me this time. I was I'm literally something that weighs 15 ounces. I thought I was saving out of my pack and didn't bring it along. And I'm like, well, I'm going to have to get over my fear of spiders real quick. Because first night, you could hear me smashing them in there with my headlamp.
I felt so bad for you because, I know your fear of spiders. And it was funny because I was laying there, just about to fall asleep. And I would just hear you smack the canvas of your tent or the sidewall of your tent. And I'm like, oh, that poor guy. He's in there just.
I smashed one of my pillow. Oh, my gosh. It was terrible. But.
Yeah.
But I got used to it. I got over it.
It was good for you.
Yeah, I needed to get over my fear of spiders, which I'm not over them, but I dealt with it for that many days and slept in there. It was fine, and as the cooler weather came in, there wasn't really any more spiders. So that was when it was hot. There were webs everywhere and spiders in all the trees.
Which you had a solid 7-8 days of hot weather where there was spiders and moths and
and you couldn't even go in your sleeping bag because it was so hot.
No, it was so hot. Yeah, I had the tent open, just the bug shield up because I don't want spiders in mine.
Yeah,
and I could just hear you in there swatting stuff. It was funny.
Yeah, that was. But we were wore out, and then the last 2 days we got really cold temperatures, a high of 45 and rain. So even when it never snowed, but it got right around freezing and would rain. And here's a lesson learned. So every hunt I ever go on, I always bring gaiters with me, and rain pants. But after, a couple weeks of not having any rain, not having anything, I'm like, I can lighten up my pack, leave them at the truck. So when we came back down looking at my bowl, I left my rain pants here, and I left my gaiters. I actually didn't even take my gaiters with me at all, even at the beginning, because the weather looked so nice. But not looking far enough ahead at the weather. My inReach pulled up like 5 days of weather, but I couldn't see beyond that. And we got this cold weather and this rain. And what happens is everything gets wet down low. So you have junipers that are just above knee high, and you're just rubbing up against it. And it wasn't like a heavy rain, but just all day it rained and it was cold. So the bottom of my pants got soaked, which then soaked my socks. My socks then soaked the inside of my boots. It wasn't that my boots were leaking, it was that. And it got to a point where my socks were slipping in my boots, and I was getting blisters so bad. My heels were just ripped apart. So I was using Leuco tape, but that wouldn't even – and Leuco tape sticks on for 10 days without having to pull it off. But when your feet are just that wet and your socks are that wet, it doesn't work. And everything was tore apart. I was just like soaked from the basically the just above the knee down, completely soaked. I was able to dry myself out at night in my sleeping bag, so this is why I use synthetic stuff over down. You think about the rewarming drill. I did that 8 years ago. Barclow's done it, and then we've talked about synthetic stuff versus down and merino. And I dried completely out at night, but as soon as I'd put those soaking wet boots on in the morning, and my socks would get wet again. And it was those last couple of days was a mental grind. I was freaking wore out just from the hunt, from the experience and not being able to capitalize, the weather. It put a damper on my mood for sure.
Yeah, and it was like it got so foggy. There was just so much moisture and everything was soaked. And there was no staying dry. Like my boots didn't get wet because I have a little taller boot, I think. I think that saved me. It didn't get right to my sock. But there was no staying dry because, everything. The grass was tall. It was a matter of walking 100 yards from the tent and your pants were already wet.
Well, and so here's another thing. So I wear, when I'm elk hunting, I typically wear the Apex pant from Sitka. I'm wearing them here in this video. I love them pants. Super quiet, super nice from that. But they're soft, so they're meant to be quiet when you're going through brush. But they do soak in a little bit more water than the mountain pant that Justin had on. His has a DWR treatment on it that seemed to shed water a little bit better. Plus, your taller boot covered your socks, and you didn't have that problem that I did. But gaiters would have solved.
Gaiters would have solved all, or rain pants would have solved all of our problems.
Yep, 100%. So, the 15, 16 ounces that you're saving, bring it. Can definitely help, or you could grind it out. I mean, we ground it out. It just was freaking miserable.
It was miserable. That night we were sitting by that tree, and couldn't even sit down because we were both just freezing. We're standing there trying to keep warm, listening.
It's all because our legs got wet.
All because our legs got wet.
Yeah, we had a rain jacket on, had proper layering up top. It was all because of our feet and our legs, and that, that was a lesson learned on my front. And I knew better. Yeah. Always carry that stuff, and I didn't. It was a good reminder for us there for sure. I was real happy with I wore a bunch of different clothes from Sitka, testing out different layering systems and stuff throughout the hunt. But at the beginning when it was 100 degrees, the Ascent pants were my go-to, and then I switched to the Apex as it got 75 and below, I guess. And I love the Apex. I always wore the core lightweight short sleeve tee, and then I'd switch between the ambient hoodie over top, which that I can't say enough about that jacket. I've been testing it for 3 years now from the whitetail standpoint, and now it just released this year. But breathable insulation, keeps you warm when you need to. You can hike with it. You don't overheat. Great piece of gear. Jetstream vest, I use that for the windstopper aspect of it. Also use the Apex hoodie, which is really quiet and has some merino built into it, some odor resistance and everything. But both you and I were wearing synthetic base layers for that long, and I didn't notice you smelling, and I don't think you noticed me stinking after that. So anyone that says that, I think merino has a lot of really good benefits to it, and I like merino, but synthetic dries out really quick, and the polygene Sitka has in that, I didn't have any issues.
And not only that, we were hiking for a solid 8, 9, 10 days where it was 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Like, we were sweating. So that was a good true test to it.
Yeah. And after like halfway through the trip, we did wash our clothes. So
Yep.
we were able to do that. So, but for a good 10 days of having the same clothes on, I was pretty impressed by that aspect of it. And this is just a tip too, like when I was talking about drying out stuff, I stuffed everything inside my sleeping bag. It might make your sleeping bag smell a little bit damp because it's going to pull that moisture out, but your body heat, so eat a hot meal, drank water beforehand, your body heat goes out and starts pushing that. My sleeping bag was almost soaked, by the morning, but I was dry because it just pushes all that moisture out the way a layering system should work. And so that worked out really well. One other thing before I want to keep going down the gear aspect of like what worked and what didn't was when you talk about the fog, second to the last evening when that bull bugled, one of the other bulls that would bugle in the same spot all the time that we can never even lay eyes on and see, and I still didn't lay eyes on him, but your camera caught him.
Yep.
So it was so foggy you couldn't see 20 yards. We heard him bugle, and we still had 45 minutes of shooting light, but it was tough to see.
It was very tough to see.
So we got set up, and all of a sudden I saw the glimpse of a cow come out, and he was chasing, and you hear his bugle just ring off in your ears. And he's, he could have been anywhere from 40 to 60 yards at that point, because that opening was tough to judge, and with it being that foggy. And you caught him on camera. We haven't blown it up to be able to see exactly what he was yet, and he's chasing around, and I was worried they were going to run us over.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't see us because it was so foggy, and our wind was good. I was afraid.
And we were at the first spot of trees from the opening. If they'd have came our way, they'd have came into our little group of trees there. And it was cool because he ripped a bugle. We were like, holy shit, he's right there. And we sneak up into this little area. We set up for a shot. Couldn't have been 2 minutes. And you can just hear him in there with that cow chasing her. You can hear, not sticks breaking. You can hear like branches breaking. You can hear his tines hitting stuff. And he actually kicked her out into the open meadow. Maybe later in the day, maybe because it was so foggy, I don't know if he felt safe out there or if that just was what he was doing.
Yeah.
But he kicked her out into the opening, and we were right there, and it was another opportunity that wasn't an opportunity, but it was so close.
Yeah. Yeah, and the next morning we went right back in there because that bull was bedding right above there, and we got in where he had come and we skipped a lot of stuff in here just to try to keep it somewhat short, but this bull would come from one direction every morning, but he wouldn't bugle until he was in his bed. So we got set up right below there, had the thermals good. Don't you know the one morning that we sit there, he literally followed us in. Had been right behind us.
He had to have been right behind us.
In the dark. And we hear barking, and this time we got winded, and we're like, no. But I just kept barking back at him, and he never left.
Mm-mm.
We didn't know. So he barked back and forth with me and him for 15 minutes, and then we sat there for an hour, and all of a sudden we hear him rip, and he's only 70 yards.
70, 80 yards, yeah.
Yep.
I don't think he ever left there. I think I don't know what he did, but.
Yeah, he hung up in there, and then he ended up, I don't know if our wind – no, I don't even know if he had our wind at that point. No, he had to if he barked, but it was just like off enough where he might have caught a little bit of a scent, and then he ended up working his way up another ridge, and we tried chasing him. It didn't work. But nonetheless, back to the gear aspect, another thing so I had used for the first time, I tried a new pack out on this hunt, and I was kind of concerned about trying a new pack out on this long of a hunt, but I brought a backup just in case. So I brought my old trusty Sitka Mountain Hauler 4000. Loved that pack, but I just like trying new stuff. So I got a pack from Seek Outside. So I've been using their tents since 2016 when I bought the first Cimarron. And I tried their Goshawk 4800, which is a breakaway frame. I'm going to do a video on it because I was that impressed with it. But breakaway frame. And then I had their Merlin day pack that uses a compression panel on the back, but also as a day pack, and a lid. The pack is 100% waterproof, and which was nice for the days that it rained and everything. I was concerned about the noise with it because it is waterproof, so it's a little bit louder, but really wasn't much louder than any other pack.
I think it was about the same as mine, to be honest. I didn't know,
Yeah.
like, I was walking behind you.
Yeah.
So, and never once was I like, man, that's a loud pack. Like,
Yeah.
it's, you know,
No.
they're all loud if you're smacking branches against them
Yeah.
and you're trying to stalk on something, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And I was super impressed with it, and multiple times that the Merlin Day Pack has shoulder straps that'll pull out. So you basically pull this back panel off and you toss it on. And when we were chasing elk around, we would drop our main packs. I'd grab that was already had water in it, had a headlamp, had extra batteries if I needed anything, had some food and a puffy jacket and rain gear. I kept that in there, ready to go. I throw it on and you could run. And it only weighed 10 pounds at most. Well, probably less than that.
Probably 7, 5.
Yeah, probably way less than that.
Yeah.
And it was able to run. I'd always mark the pack location, the pack icon on Spartan Forge. I have them all over the mountain. So we drop our packs and go.
Every day we dropped our packs and went.
Yep.
For a while there, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. And but I was really impressed by that pack. Seek Outside's been making packs for a while. I just haven't heard much about them. I didn't really talk to anybody that used them, and I had an opportunity to try one. And I have no obligation to say anything nice about them. Seek Outside is a partner of mine, but from the tent aspect. And they're like, why don't you try one of our packs? Like, you don't even have to use it if you don't like it. They're very just great with that. And I was like, all right. I said, I'm a, kind of a weirdo about packs. I like certain packs and very impressed with it. So
yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah.
Especially if you're using it for the first time like that.
Yeah. No, it was really, really good pack. So I was excited about that. But other than that, what about you? Do you have any gear that stood out for you?
I mean, I've been kind of running the same everything for 2 years now, but I got the Sitka pack, the Mountain Hauler. I like that. It's actually really good for camera stuff, just because there's a couple pockets in there, those top lids.
Yep.
I use I have a pair of Crispies for boots, darn tough socks, which I like those a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Basically lived in these pants. I mean, I did,
Yeah.
I will say at first I wasn't sold on the knee pad idea. When I first got them, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this. But even after, this hunt, it's been proved to me over and over. But on this hunt especially, like when everything's wet like that, or when it's so thick up there's branches and pine cones everywhere, it's nice to be able to have knee pads to...
How many times were we kneeled down? Like,
yeah,
you get in a situation, if you stand up, you stick out like a sore thumb, so you had to kneel down.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah.
But other than that, I was running a core lightweight base layer, then a heavyweight hoodie, and then a Traverse, my puffy, and my raincoat. And I just kind of floated with, whatever there. So.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think we really had any major gear problems at all. Did I have anything that failed? No, I also liked that Sawyer water system that I have.
Oh, yeah.
That filter system. So I got the Sawyer's, the mini filter. It's super small, lightweight. I've always used the Platypus in the past, which plugged up a lot. Used this one for 21 days. It started going a little bit slow. It needs back flush, but other than that, it worked great. I mean, we had relatively clean water that we were filtering. It was out of like cattle tank, basically.
Yeah.
But really happy with that system. It would filter four liters at a time, so basically a gallon at a time, and help for both of us. We just use that one system for the both of us.
Yeah. So
every day we were filtering probably 8 liters at least. I was carrying around 5 liters at a time. I had 2 of my East Meets West Nalgene's, and then my 3-liter bladder. You had a 2.5-liter bladder and a couple Nalgene's.
Yep.
So
yep.
we, that system worked out really nice. That was something new I used. I've had the jet boil forever. The igniter's been broke, so I just use a lighter with it. But I haven't upgraded it just because it's been working. So
it works good. It works faster than mine, I noticed. It boils quick.
Yeah, it does. It boils really quick, and we used mine for everything on all of it. You didn't even carry your stove up. Nope. You just brought the fuel, and I carried the stove.
Which that's a good way to do it. Like if you're hunting with another person, like I'll carry enough fuel for us, and you carry the stove, and we'll have our own food. Mm-hmm. It's not a lot of weight being cut, but there's no sense bringing 2 stoves and double the amount of fuel that you need. So
yep. I was really happy with the Silex, the Seek Outside Silex, the floorless shelter. Like, I've used that since last year, I guess. I've had the Cimarron before that, and then I had the Courthouse wall tent on the bear hunt. But this was the first extended hunt I've got to use it on. I've backpacked with it and hunted with it 3-4 times now, but this was the first time that I spent 20 days in it. Very impressed with it, but I will probably bring the Nest going forward. It doesn't weigh that much, and it just gives you a little bit more of a homey feeling to it. So
we did have that hot weather. If the whole hunt would have been 45, 50 degrees, you'd have a different perspective because there wouldn't have been any spiders in there. Once the temperature dropped down, all the bugs were gone.
Yep.
So just that first week and a half that, was getting you.
Yeah, definitely. And we didn't get to use the quiet cats as much as I had hoped, or not that I had hoped, but that I thought they were going to be like, a really awesome tool, and they are for their purpose. It's just for this hunt we didn't get to use them as much, and I'd never used an e-bike before. They're pretty solid. We used them this morning. Struggled a little bit on like the super muddy clay trails, but you do that with just about anything. It was
uphill too.
Yeah, uphill
with rocks and big ruts from the rain.
But I'll tell you what, those things freaking pull you up hills. Like,
yeah.
And you have to pedal with it. It's not a dirt bike, but it gets rid of a lot of resistance with it. So the models that I have here, the Apex bikes, really happy with it. I'm actually about to go on a hunt with Quiet Cat. They're not a partner of mine, but I've known one of the sales guys for a long time, and he asked if I want to do this like kind of a challenge where we'll go to a place in Illinois that's run as an outfitter, but they're bringing in a few of us to see if we can figure it out on our own and try to hunt it in ag land. I'm going to see if some of my mountain buck tactics will work or how I need to adjust for that. So, but I'm planning on using these Quiet Cats in some areas that I'm allowed to ride them on this year for whitetails too. So I'm excited to see how that works out. But trying to think of any other gear that I had that I was like, really blown away with.
You pretty much have your gear list dialed at this point. One thing that you do better than I do that I notice is your food. I'm more of like a chuck some Pop-Tarts, some granola bars, a bonus Starburst in my meals, and I'm good to go. And you have your calories down. Like, I will say you did a lot better than I did on this hunt with food.
Yeah, the Heather's Choice meals are super good. So I've always said the sockeye salmon chowder is my favorite Heather's Choice meal, and I think it's still there. But the spaghetti meal is a close second now. Man, when I'd have that pop up in my food for the day, I'd be like, yeah.
You'd always tell me about it. You'd be like, spaghetti tonight.
Yeah, I know.
That's funny.
Yeah, that was really good. What else was it? There's a lot of I have a pretty good storage system for everything now. I get those Mountain Ops flash bags in different sizes, and I'll put like one with all my water filtration, one with all my cooking stuff, a first aid kit that's a different color. I have my survival kit that's got extra tools for my bow and all this other stuff in there, and I have like all these things organized in these bags, and it makes it so easy, and I'm color coded so I can pull them out and go, and that was helpful for me. So I don't remember any major failures actually, so I think our gear's been pretty dialed from that standpoint.
Yeah, at this point of hunting out west and elk hunts and stuff, it takes you a few years to like learn what's good and what you need to change, and I feel like both of us now are at a point where like we'll always be changing gear and updating stuff just because, but I think what we have now and moving forward it'll always be pretty good.
Yeah, no, and I was happy with my bow setup, although obviously I didn't connect with anything. I felt really good with it. That inline 3 I got from Prime's my favorite bow that I've had so far. I just put a dialed archery sight on it. I'm trying out their triple pin. People saw some photos of it. Like, is that as a prototype? I know Taylor and Jordan, a couple of the owners of the company, and I said I wanted a triple pin, and they were already working on it. It wasn't the guy came up with the idea, but they let me try it out on this hunt. I would love that. So
that's a sharp looking sight too.
It looks slick. Yeah. It's good. So I think that's really about it. I mean, the film is going to be freaking sweet. Although there's not, I didn't kill anything. I think the film's going to turn out really cool. Just the audio of it. And I told you beforehand, and you had this vision too because we think alike, but like I wanted to capture the audio of September for people that haven't been out here that want to try it, or just like, sorry for the wind, but or people that have experienced it and want to remember it. And like, we've got all the sounds of September on there.
Yeah.
We've all the way down to turkeys. Called in a couple toms. I had a tag. I didn't. I can't believe I didn't shoot one.
The funniest part was when those turkeys were just yelping in the bottom. They were coming, and you had your elk read in, and you're like, I'm gonna give them some clucks, and it sounded like a half bugle, half donkey, half turkey. And God, we were just laughing.
Yeah.
God, that was so funny.
I was so used to making elk sounds. I couldn't figure out how to make a turkey sound, and then I finally got it, and I thought they were a couple hens. I just had my bow laying on the ground. Two big longbeards came in. I'm like, and then I tried calling them back, and it didn't work. And then we had other opportunities at them, and I was like, no, focus on elk, focus on elk.
We could have killed them if we went for it.
Yeah.
But we were elk hunting, so I was like, if they come by and it's a good shot, we'll do it.
Yeah.
You know, but.
And then whitetails, saw some mountain bucks.
Yep.
I found some scrapes that I marked.
You marked them, and I was like, when are you ever going to hunt these? Like, I don't know. Going to mark them, though.
Yeah. I don't learn from it. Found some mountain bucks. You found a mountain buck shed.
Yep.
Yeah,
some
it's pretty
deer.
cool. Yeah, whitetail, mule deer, elk, turkeys, bears.
The squirrels, holy shit. Every time we set up and got ready, somewhere a squirrel would be chattering at us 20 yards away.
Yep.
And they would not stop.
No, they would not stop.
Oh,
Gave away our
man.
location
Every time. Yep.
Yeah, there's so many grouse. I didn't shoot a grouse. Came close to shooting some grouse. Decided not to. It was like, oh my gosh, just every animal you could think of, we were seeing them, and just, it was awesome, man. The trip was everything I could ask for, other than the fact that I'm still pretty pissed that I'm not going home with elk meat. I'm not going to lie about it. I come out here to kill an elk, and I had an awesome experience, and I have no faults about that, and couldn't ask for anything more from the experience standpoint. But man, is it really grinding me that I didn't kill something.
That's why we love it, though. It's just part of bow hunting elk,
I know. Yeah. I guess I could say the cliche. Well, I learned something, and it was a great trip.
Yeah, you learn something every day you're out in the field.
Yeah. No, it was no, we really did. But I'm gonna miss this place. But it's time to focus on whitetails. Get back to Pennsylvania. I won't even be there for the opener because I'm going to Illinois, which is hard for me to do. But
might pay out good for you, though.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn right around, and got a season packed ahead of us here. So I'm sure we forgot some stuff, but the film will be coming out. We'll be putting a lot more content. If you're watching a video, I have the new Deer Camp hoodies. I don't think I've named them yet, but I'm thinking probably call them the Deer Camp hoodies. New design on here. I've had them for a month and a half. Haven't had a chance to put them up on the website yet. If they're not live by the time of this podcast, they'll be up shortly after. Waiting on some hats to come into, t-shirts. I love this design. I drew it up on a piece of paper utilizing our Deer Camp and like how people pull in with a truck and a buck in the tailgate, and just kind of that old school vibe. And Jordan Riley at Captured Creative took it and made it a reality and put his spin on it to make it look good. I'm super pumped about it. It's like a heavy Carhartt material.
Super heavy. I like it.
It's like
very heavy, warm.
Heavy, warm Carhartt material. It'll be super cool at Deer Camp, going out to the bars with your buddies, whatever else, campfires.
Weddings, anything.
Weddings, yeah. If you're in my town, weddings they'll work for. Anything else. But, yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. And, Justin, thank you for coming out. And I can't wait to see this film, what it's going to look like, a bunch of good stuff coming out of it. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for bringing me. This was one of the best elk hunts I've ever been on. It was awesome.
Heck yeah, man. Just keep grinding.
Keep grinding.
All right, thanks, guys. We'll see you later.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.